A good Erev Shabbos. Jews and food. There's a lot you can say. When we eat, how we eat, what we don't eat. Someone once told me her favorite Jewish holiday is Shavuos, because you can eat what you want, when you want, wherever you want. Once upon a time, it happened that a couple were blessed with a beautiful baby boy, and with delight they named him and they raised him. But they were dismayed, then concerned, then outright panicked. By age 1, age 2, he hadn't said a word. Speech therapist, psychiatrist, test, nothing. So by his 3rd birthday, they were beside themselves. Not even a peep out of this boy since he cried at his bris. All of a sudden, they're sitting one Friday night by the Shabbos table. The boy pokes in the soup with his spoon a little bit, looks up at both his parents. He says, clear as a bell, "You call this a matzah ball? This is mush." The parents are stunned. They're tears of joy. They're dancing around the table. When they come back to themselves, finally, they have the wherewithal. They calm down. And the parents ask, "Boychik, why didn't you say anything until now? Why did you wait so long?" The boy looks at him and says, "Up till now, everything was fine." If you hold by the old saying that you are what you eat, then last week's talk, I hope, wasn't too upsetting for you. We talked about a connection between consuming blood and bloodthirsty behavior, contrasted with the Torah's instruction to us to avoid consuming the blood, because blood is the life force of the animal. The theme of you are what you eat continues this week with Parsha Shmini, which spends the last couple of aliyahs talking about how to distinguish between kosher and non-kosher animals. For some of them, we're given signs that we have to look for. Others, we're given the name of the non-kosher ones, actually, and we're left to assume that the rest are kosher, as long as our tradition tells us so. The question on people's minds, though, is always why? Why this and not that? Why those and not these? The end of the parsha suggests that there is something intrinsic to each forbidden animal that makes it unfit for us. Near the end of the parsha, we have an instruction. It says, "Al tishaktu es nafshei seichem b'chol sheretz asheretz ala aretz." You should not make yourselves detestable, disgusting, with any swarming creature. And then it says, "V'lo sitamu behem v'meisem bam." Don't make yourself impure through their impurity. In other words, the Torah is telling us what should be gross and repulsive to us, ultimately, because 2 verses later it says, "Ki ani Hashem Elokeichem, v'hiskadishtem v'yesem kedoshim." Because I am God, your God, and I have made you holy. And you shall be holy, ki kadosh ani, because I am holy, says God. Sounds like it's repeating itself a little bit, but really the verse is telling us that the source of the mitzvah to be holy and how eating kosher serves really a part of that. In order for us to be fitting vessels for the divine presence, for God's Shekhinah to rest on us and in us, we maintain a higher standard of sensitivity and distinction. Again, as we mentioned in last week's talk, we're not talking about a medical textbook here. It's not just about things that are going to keep you healthy in body necessarily. As the Akedas Yitzchak points out, there's actually no mention of any poisonous animals or plants here. Right? We're concerned exclusively with our neshamas and the effect what we eat has on our souls. Verse following that opens another aspect of the conversation. It says, "Ki ani Hashem," I am God, "Hamalacha eschem me'eretz Mitzrayim," I, the one who took you out of Egypt, "Liyos lachem lelakim," to be your God, "Ve'yesem kedoshim ki kadosh ani." Again, it says, you should be holy because I am holy. So now we can connect the idea of holiness and the idea of kashrus, kosher food, to Yetzias Mitzrayim, to the Exodus from Egypt. That's particularly poignant as we're now 3 weeks away from Pesach. We're already starting to clean, or think about cleaning anyway, for Pesach, and we're looking to purchase the items that have that sought-after kosher LePesach seal of approval. So let's talk about these two aspects of kashrus a minute, specifically kosher LePesach, both the whys and the wherefores. The wherefores are getting more complicated all the time, as you see. around you. Things that were once standard Pesach supplies all of a sudden need special Pesach certification. Rarely has to do with better standards, not rarely, it really has to do with better standards of kashrus, as well as really an improved flow of information around the world as to how these foods are produced. And at the same time, ever increasing complication of the food production process. Once upon a time, for example, my rabbis told me you can buy any extra virgin olive oil. No need for a kosher supervision symbol. Enough was known about the process of producing this kind of oil that we knew we could rely on it even if it didn't have a kosher seal of supervision. Of course, in North America, it's always pretty easy to find a couple, a handful, a dozen different brands of extra virgin oil with hashgacha. But if you were in a pinch, or if there was a sale on the big bottle, once in a while we'd get the non-supervised kind, relying on the advice of these rabbis who say if it says pure, good enough. In recent years, like really the last 4 or 5 years, closer inspection of the process and changes in the way the product comes to market, has turned up evidence that pure oil, extra virgin, with pictures of olives on the bottle, is allowed to have, and actually usually does have, a certain percentage of vegetable oil, like corn oil, added in because it's cheaper and it makes it more profitable. If it's mostly olive oil with some vegetable oil, corn oil added in, customer can't really taste the difference. More profits for the company, but the kosher consumer ought to be concerned, and the kosher LePesach consumer has to be aware that it's not as reliable as it once was. I'm still not over my shock from a couple years ago. We were sitting around in the Davidson Social Hall, Shalosh Shudas, one time, and I was gobsmacked by the label on the Manischewitz wine. Who sits around and reads the labels on wine? I happened to glance at it, that's all. And I noticed that it says on the bottle of Manischewitz wine, not kosher for Passover. After decades of telling people any wine that's kosher, it's kosher for Passover, I was all of a sudden wrong. How could that be? I spent the rest of Shalosh Shudas wondering, how do you even make wine kosher but not kosher for Pesach? Do you eat a sandwich over the bottle when you're putting the cap on? How do you do that? And of all the wines to let me down, Manischewitz. Can't remember if I called the company or maybe the website. Somehow I got the information. This particular type of Manischewitz is the extra sweetened style for people who crave that extra viscosity. It actually has corn syrup added to it. For whatever reason people could possibly want that. In any case, kosher wine plus kosher corn syrup equals not kosher for Passover, at least for Ashkenazim. The point is, why are we so much more cautious on Pesach than the rest of the year? Well, the Halach and Shulchan Aruch points up a distinction between things that are never kosher and things that are sometimes kosher, sometimes not. In our case, chametz is kosher. Leavened products are kosher all year round. We can eat bread or crackers or cereal or drink beer or single malt scotch anytime we like, except during Pesach, those 8 days. So since it's something that we're accustomed to, we have to add a higher level of watchfulness, right? You have to be even more careful because we're used to seeing it around the whole year. You have to remember that this is the week when you can't have it. So careful are we that when chametz, which gets mixed into our food on Pesach, is not even nullified 1 in 1,000 parts. That's how much more stringent it is than the rest of the year. So the added level of kosher for Passover certification is not just a sticker on the package. It's really a much more complicated deep dive into the provenance of each and every ingredient in the product, not just what's in it, but how it's manufactured. I'll share once again our life hack, our easy shortcut to the high prices of prepared kosher LePesach foods. We eat in our house absolutely delicious but simple foods for Pesach. Plain fruit and vegetable salads, not too many heavy courses, and a lot of fruit for dessert. Could be that we're eating the most healthy of the whole year on Pesach of all times. But again, just to remember, it's not necessarily about the health. That is a nice benefit. It's about the holiness, the sanctity, kedusha, spirituality, making ourselves sensitive to what's important in the larger scheme of things. And what's most important all year round, but even more so in these weeks leading up to Pesach and our national celebration of freedom and liberation as we prepare our homes and our kitchens and our tables, and most importantly, ourselves to welcome the joy and special holiness of the Yom Tov of Pesach, we do our best to get everything as clean and ready and up to snuff for the Chag as it possibly can be. And again, that includes ourselves, no less than the floors, the curtains, the counters, the stovetops, everything. 3 or 4 years ago, we used to talk about a video or an email going viral, we used to say, right? It means that people would just click it and forward it until everyone who ever had an email account had seen it. Then in these past 2 years, which are hopefully for the most part behind us, Kanai Nahara, please God, we learned the real meaning of going viral. We learned that a virus, microscopic, invisible to the naked eye, could find a way to travel around the world even quicker than we can keep track of it. So we washed our hands, and we washed our groceries, and we washed our mail, and we went into seclusion because we realized that an impossibly small speck of something could have large consequences. We were no strangers to the idea, of course, because we knew for 100 generations the importance of getting rid of every speck of chametz before Pesach for our spiritual well-being. So we, the Jewish people, were very well acquainted with the notion that a very small bit, the tiniest bit, has to be avoided absolutely with no compromise. Now, if an unfortunate part of our lives for the past while has been governed by fear, let us recognize that even that has a place also. It's said that during Elul, the month leading up to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the Jewish people do tshuva out of fear. Not fear of an awful punishment necessarily, that's in the conversation somewhere, but really fear of staying distant, remaining distant from God any more than we have to be. God forbid. By contrast, in Nisan, the month of Pesach, we do tshuva out of ahava, out of love. We follow our customs, we organize our Seder like we remember all the good things that we remember, and retooling it and tinkering with it so it appeals to our friends, our relatives, the generations that we gather around our tables, hopefully this year, in good health. These weeks leading up to Pesach are that tshuva me'ahava, return to closeness and in a more embracing relationship with Hashem. We're taking out a second Sefer Torah this week for the third time in recent weeks, now specifically in anticipation of Pesach. And we're also, by the way, blessing this Shabbos, the new month of Nisan, which will begin next Shabbat. Our third of 4 special portions for which we have a special maftir reading in Haftarah is this week, Parah. So this Shabbos we'll read from Chumash B'Midbar, the beginning of Parshas Chukas, chapter 19 of the book of Numbers. What is this topic? What's this mitzvah? This is a chok, the truly incomprehensible, even to King Solomon, mitzvah of the red heifer, whose ashes are sprinkled by a kohen over people who were tmei meis, who had the tumah of being in close proximity with a non-living body. The instruction comes particularly at this time of year because as a preparation to bringing the Korban Pesach, the Paschal offering, Bnei Yisrael became tahor, and this process was the key element of accomplishing that. And it is also Shabbos Mevarchim Nisan. Next Shabbos, a week from now, we begin Nisan, the month of Geula, the month of redemption, month of freedom and deliverance for the Jewish people. We say, quoting the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah that we learned on Tuesday mornings a few years ago, we say that just as we were redeemed in the month of Nisan, so too in Nisan shall we be redeemed. May it come speedily. We always say the special blessing for the new month on the preceding Shabbos, which is this week, so we'll do that before Musaf on Shabbat morning. Our Siddur says that the congregation should be informed of the Molad, so we'll mention in Shul that the reappearance of the moon in Yerushalayim, the eternal and undivided capital of Israel, will take place next Friday at 4:36 p.m. Die Molad wird sein Freitag nach Mittag 36 Minuten nach 4 Zeger. Chodesh wird sein dem kommenden Shabbos Kodesh. Now we're just 3 weeks away from the Seder, so all this should be waking us up to prepare for a Pesach of real joy. Hopefully togetherness with friends and family that we've been missing these last 2 years, a real taste of redemption and freedom, all, please God, in good health. Shabbat Shalom.